and welcome back to the show. You're on Soulstar Radio. I'm Jacquelene Close-Moore, and I'm joined today by a fabulous guest. I've got Linda Hill, who is a second-generation astrologer. She's also the author of the Sabian Symbol Oracle, which is a beautiful deck, and it goes into the Sabian symbols. It really explains them really well, and that, of course, comes from the original work with Dane Rudyard and also a very amazing clairvoyant that originally came up with these symbols, but this goes into it in a modern interpretation, I would feel, and really quite wonderful. And Linda's been doing this astrology for so long. Professional, has been around the world, from America to Turkey to beyond, and a wonderful resource for anyone wanting to learn more about astrology. And really, when we're looking at astrology, some people go, oh, the horoscopes. And it's like, no. There are 9 planets. There's a bunch of asteroids. There's a whole heap of wheels within wheels going on here. And we need really good interpretation of that. And there's 360 degrees of how this all intermingles. So I just wanted to really introduce this fabulous lady to you all. We have Linda Hill, and you're up in New South Wales, and welcome in there, Linda, to our show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. What fun, eh? We're connecting with the rest of the world. I love it.
That's beautiful.
I'm in Sydney, Avalon Beach, actually. It's really lovely, and also I have a place. I rent here, and I have a place in the Blue Mountains, just a little tiny place. So I get the mountains and the and the trees, and then I get the beach here. So pretty lucky, really. Hard work, but lucky.
Absolutely. Now, you, of course, have your Facebook page on which you're putting a lot of information about what's happening astrologically around the world and symbolically, and you're not afraid to take on the hard issues there, which a lot of people are, and I love the spunk in how you deal with that. But talk more, first of all, I guess, in what got you going in astrology in the first place?
Well, my father was an astrologer. I didn't live with my father, but during the 60s and the 70s, he was an astrologer, and he was also an Edgar Cayce healer. He was really my father. When I asked him about it, I've got a recording of him. I recorded Dad talking about Edgar Cayce, and Dad was just a chook farmer, an egg farmer, a chicken farmer. Australians call them chooks in Australia, and so it's unusual for a farmer really to be so interested in astrology, I guess, and Edgar Cayce, and Dad said that he was wrapped in Edgar Cayce, and I just really loved that. But I didn't live with my father, so he did influence me in that when I went to visit him, I was born under a full moon, and my parents broke up when I was like 3. That doesn't always happen to full moon births, but it does often. Yeah. And it's often an outcome. And I'd go and visit him, and he'd say, oh, Linda, you're having a Jupiter transit. You should get a job with Qantas, and then we can all fly freer or something. And it was like, yeah, Dad, whatever you reckon. And when I was about 30, I saw an ad by a wonderful astrologer and teacher, Christine Broadbent, an Australian, and she put an ad in the local paper saying, did you want to understand more about yourself through astrology? And I thought, yes. And I just had 2 children, so, I was a mother of young children, and so I wanted something stimulating. So I went along, and she said in that first lesson, she said, why are you all here? And one by one she went around, and when she got to me, I said, oh, I don't want to do other people's charts. I just want to know more about myself. Anyway, meanwhile, I've done thousands of charts, and meanwhile, within a couple of weeks, I'd signed up for, major astrology lessons, and I couldn't get enough. I just could not get enough astrology. I was having a Uranus transit, and it was almost like I'd be standing over, cooking the dinner, and I'd have an astrology book in one hand and, my spoon stirring the dinner in the other. I couldn't stop. I was obsessed, and I'm probably still obsessed to some extent, but, once you get a lot of it down, the wheels start to go around and you start to understand it and, all that. So, yeah, that was it, and I just flew into it 100 miles an hour, and obviously meant to do it.
Oh, definitely. Tell us about your interaction with the Sabian symbols and what the Sabian symbols are for those who've never maybe heard of them before.
Sure. I'll start with saying that when I was doing, it was either second year or third year, I did second and third year in astrology concurrently because I couldn't get it into myself fast enough. So I literally did third year while I was doing second year. And so in amongst that, we did the progressed lunations, which I love progressed charts. I always use a progressed chart, always, with the natal chart. And my teacher started talking about the Sabian symbols, but he was giving them as an example. He wasn't talking about the Sabian symbols. You know, he was just giving everybody their new moon Sabian symbol. And I was going, hey, wait a minute, that's really interesting. And then I started to get into them at 100 miles an hour. But what they are basically is that as many people know, but not everybody knows, the zodiac is 360 degrees. There's 30 degrees in each sign, and there's 12 signs, so that makes 360. It's a wheel, and you know, like Aries has 30 degrees, Taurus has 30 degrees, you know, Gemini has 30 degrees. And so what we do is we look at, you know, the planets in your chart or the planets that are going on now or whatever, it doesn't matter. Wherever there's a zodiacal degree, you can look up the Sabian symbol. Now, the Sabian symbol is a phrase. And it might be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or the gold rush tears men away from their native soil, or a dentist at work. And, excuse me, and they make sense, you know, in that we see them come true in our lives. And, yeah, so I should really tell a little story about how it started. I'll tell it quickly, but in 1925, Mark Edmund Jones, who was an amazing man, he was an astrologer, and he was a minister of the church. He was also a Hollywood screenwriter. He wrote many Hollywood scripts, which were, he was commissioned to write them. He didn't make the movies, he was commissioned to write the scripts. He was also very much into the occult and the esoteric. And he used to teach, and he was a philosopher, and he was an author. I mean, there was almost nothing he couldn't do. And so he got together with a woman called Elsie Wheeler, who I love. I mean, she's been dead since before I was born, but I sort of have this real connection with her. And so he got together with her in 1925, and they went to a park in San Diego. It's called Balboa Park. And he had 360 white 3-inch by 5-inch cardboard cards. They call them index cards. And on the back of each one, he'd written a degree of the zodiac: Aries 1, Aries 2, Aries 3, all the way through to Pisces 30. So he had 360 index cards, which must have been a stack, you know, like that, maybe like that. And he went to Balboa Park with her, and she had special needs because she was crippled with arthritis, badly crippled. From the age of 3, she was in a wheelchair. And so she had her own needs throughout the course of a day. So this is quite impressive to me that they did this. Mark Edmund Jones would shuffle the cards, take one at random. Neither he nor Elsie knew what was on the other side of the card, what degree of the zodiac it was. And she'd see something in her mind's eye or hear something, and he'd write it on the card, and then he'd discard that, shuffle the cards, take another one, same process. And Dean Raja, who wrote a book about them in 1970, it was published in 1973, an astrological mandala. He said that if Mark Edmund Jones and Elsie Wheeler did an 8-hour day, because it is said that they did this in one day, and there's no reason to believe that's not true. If they did an 8-hour day, that meant that Elsie would have, Mark would have put a card in front of her. She would have seen or heard, you know, a phrase, and then she would say it out loud. He'd write it on the card, he'd discard it and get another one every minute and a half for 8 hours.
Whoa.
Every minute and a half.
That is huge.
8 hours. So, yeah, that gives you an idea of the enormity of the project. And the reason that he chose Elsie Wheeler, who was an amazing and wonderful Virgo woman, was because she'd been for 30 years in the Home for the Incurable in St. Louis, Missouri, and he considered her to be a bit rather, well, they called them shut-ins when they were in those days in wheelchairs, and that she wasn't a woman of the world. She wasn't educated in the ways of the world as much as someone who would have been not in the home for the incurable. And not only that, she had a lot of people die around her. She had people die around her in her family, but also a lot of people would have died around her in the home for the incurable. You can only imagine what that was like. So she became a spiritualist medium, and somehow or another, and I don't know how, she got from St. Louis, from the home for the incurable, she got to San Diego, where she lived out the rest of her life, about another Saturn return, really. It was about another 28 years. She was in, I think it was that long. Have I thought about that? No, I don't think it is a Saturn return. I think it's a Saturn, half Saturn. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She moved to San Diego in about 1923. Then they did the Sabian symbols in Balboa Park in 1925, and then she died in 1939. I think it was, or 38. She died of intestines got all trapped up and everything, a blockage, and she died a very painful death after an operation. Anyway, she had a very, very sad life. She had a lot of death around her. Both of her guardians ended up killing people. I mean, her story, mind-boggling. And one day I want to write a lot more about her story. I've researched her life a lot because I really feel that a lot of the kudos for the Sabian symbols went to Mark Edmund Jones and to Dane Rudger, when it was Elsie Wheeler who did the thing. And without Elsie Wheeler, it would not have been the same in any way, shape or form. They might have come up with a different set. But anyway, and another thing about all of that is that what is said to have happened on that day, Mark Edmund Jones said this, Elsie Wheeler agreed with it, was that somebody from the Sabian alchemists was coming through Elsie Wheeler, and the Sabian alchemists were around 2,000 years ago in eastern Turkey. Well, it was Mesopotamia then, obviously. It's eastern Turkey now. And I went there last year. I went to Haran, where the Sabians were from. So the Sabians were sort of pre-Christian, pre-Muslim, all that organised religion sort of stuff, and they were into the planets out of Saturn. So they were astrologers, and they were also loosely said alchemists. You could loosely call them alchemists. They're a bit different from alchemists, but they worship the planets out of Saturn. They build temples to those planets. They used talismans and magical spells. And they predicted things, and the Sabians wrote, quite a few books on astrology and everything. And it's very interesting to note that Abraham, who has been claimed by the three religions, was actually a Sabian. I find that fascinating. And I think that could actually be a book as big as Dan Brown's, what was his book called? The Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
So, So, have we gone off there? We lost video. Who did we lose video for? Linda. Oh, that's not supposed to happen.
That's kind of weird.
That is. It just happened, and that might mean, everything's going all right.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
We're having one of those mornings. And, I don't know why that's happened. I can't see it here. We lost video. Yeah. Oh, well, it can be interesting.
Sorry with that. That's okay.
Well, it is one of those mornings, and it's interesting because the moon is smack on my Venus, so on the embassy ball degree. So, so the moon right now is on the embassy ball degree, and, so that means something. So these symbols, I was talking about Elsie Wheeler, but I've gone on to something else because now we've gone on. So the Sabian symbols are a phrase. And, like the dentist at work. Well, I found when I started writing my book that I could write pages about the dentist at work. And I found that to be really interesting. It's like, wow, how much can you say about a dentist at work? It's needed. It can be about bad nutrition. It can be, something that's good for your teeth, that you fix your teeth up, you feel relieved when you come out of the dentist. It's something that can be because of social rot. There's all these different ways you can look at a symbol, and I found that I had the ability to do that. And and just getting back to Elsie Wheeler, my chart and Elsie Wheeler's are so enmeshed that it's just blown my mind. And so I started to research her. No one else has done, that I know of. No one's contacted me to say that they have researched Elsie Wheeler like I have. So, she's wonderful. And, I've got an article about her on my website at sabiansymbols.com. So that was the beginning of the Sabian symbols. And so Mark Edmund Jones then had 360 white 3-inch by 5-inch, cardboard cards, and he wrapped them in, I think you've lost me again, but it doesn't matter, wrapped in muslin and put them in a box. And his students knew that he'd done it. And so his students asked him if he could get them out and they could work with them. And he then in 1930, was it 1930, 1931, I do know all this, he rewrote the symbols much longer.
Yeah.
He wrote the Sabian symbols so that they had many more words, and I don't love all of them, but I really like them quite a lot. So what I've done when I wrote my book is I cherry-picked the ones that Mark Edmund Jones made longer. I between those and the ones that Dane Rajah changed a bit, and the ones, that Elsie Wheeler, the way she saw them. I just went through and I went, I like that longer version. I like what Dane Rajah, how he put the Sabian symbols. So you will come across different versions of the Sabian symbols, but they should all be very close to the original. I won't mention any names, but there is one book that was written where a number of the symbols are changed completely and don't even have the flavour of the original, and that's not my way. I don't like that. I think Elsie Wheeler was really tapping into something. Oh, that's right. I want to tell you this because I think the listeners might really like this.
Yeah.
At one stage in the proceeding in 1925, Elsie Wheeler stopped, and Mark Edmund Jones said, why did you pause? Why did you stop? And Elsie Wheeler, I'm paraphrasing, I haven't looked at this for a long time, but she said basically, because the brother stopped. And he said, why did he do that? And she said, he's standing there with his arms folded because you wrote down something incorrectly, or something along those lines. Don't quote me. I'm not being very scholarly about this. But anyway, and then Mark Edmund Jones was testing the brother of the Sabian Brotherhood, and he said to Elsie, well, why didn't he fix it? And Elsie Wheeler said, because you are in time and space and he is not.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So when I read that, I was like, oh, my God. See, my father was he wasn't into the Sabian symbols. He never really got the idea of the Sabian symbols. He's passed away now, but he never really got the idea of Pluto either, because he was from the generation where they just didn't get it. And he'd say, I don't get Pluto. Meanwhile, you could call me Miss Pluto. That could be my nickname. I have everything in my charts, either in Scorpio or aspected by Pluto, tightly. And it was sort of like, yeah, Dad, thanks. I've got more Pluto than you'll ever know about. But anyway, he didn't really understand all of that. My father was very into this esoteric perception of things, So when I read that, I've always had a bit of a trouble with the idea of channeling. Because sometimes what's wrong? Or, but I can't deny this. There's no denying that this stuff works. And so when you see it in someone's chart, like when you look at someone's Sabian symbols, it will describe how they live their life in one way or another. But the thing is that really needs to be remembered, a lot of astrologers have trouble with the Sabian symbols because they're not that great. This is weird, I know. They're not that great with symbology, with symbols. And you go, how can you not be great with symbols? You're into Neptune, you're into Jupiter, you're into Saturn, how can you not be great with symbols? And they go, well, I don't really know what a dentist at work in my chart really means. And meanwhile, they're punishing people by pulling their teeth out with no anesthetic. Anyway, it really does show. But the thing is, as with astrology, obviously, the consciousness of the person is everything. So the consciousness of the person will define how that person sees the Sabian symbols working in their chart, or how they do work, or there's no way of telling. I did a whole year of studying Adolf Hitler's chart. This is 20 years ago, and the reason I did it was because the what's it called? There was a research society that had done this article. I do know that had done this article on Hitler, and like Hitler's chart and what made him be who he was. And I thought, well, there was nothing done about the Sabian symbol, so I thought I've got to do that. So I bought all these books on Hitler and read far too much about him. It was like I was in my balsamic phase period, and before the new moon, and it felt like that. And I spent a year on it. It was like looking at a dark crystal. And I wrote 19 pages of about Hitler and the Sabian symbols. And what I want to say here is that this blew my mind. I know I'm talking a lot, not letting you ask questions, but I'm just doing that stream of consciousness thing I do with the Sabian symbols. Oh, here we go. I've gone.
You're right.
Can you still hear me? All right. Yeah. Three separate times what I did when I was travelling. One was in America, one was in Wales, and one was in Australia. I had the chart of Hitler, and I covered up the data so no one knew where this person was born or, what day or anything. And I said to the class each time, if you know who this is, please don't disclose who that is, until I tell you, because you'll ruin it for everybody else. Anyway, so I put up Hitler's chart, and I just did a bit of a run around the Sabian symbols and interpreted them, not in a negative fashion, just interpreted them. And I said, now who do you think this is? And the class, one person said Gandhi.
Yep, because he had that potential.
I went, Gandhi. Okay. The next class I did exactly the same thing. Only one person responded. They said Gandhi.
Yep.
What? Oh, that's bizarre. And then I did it a third time. I didn't do it after 3 times because that was plenty. And they said Gandhi again. And I went, oh, that is really bizarre. No one said any other name. It was only Gandhi. And so far from Gandhi, it's not funny. But I can see how with the Sabian symbols, they would think that person might be very positive, So that blew my mind. I already knew that was possible, but it blew my mind that it happened like that 3 separate times with only one person saying the exact same person that was wrong.
So, that's amazing. That's amazing, Linda. I'll have to have you back on next time. Chat more about the Sabian symbols. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and we'll catch up again next time.
Thanks for being on the show. It all went through. Bye.